Did you ever have to like scrimp or wedge your way or kind of shimmy your way into making something work out that you wanted to work out? It took all kinds of acrobatics, but you got it to work. We're going to think about that today on Now What Devotions from Trinity and Cyrus. Sometimes it takes all of our know-how and all of our maybe shadiness to get things to work out how we want them to sometimes. And you know, sometimes you have to bend the rules or kind of bend expectations and to get what you want. And this can be avoiding trouble. Maybe you do everything you can to not get in trouble. Or maybe it's the opposite. It can be you do everything you can just to get something to work out the way you think it should work out. And when you're done, maybe it was a good thing, maybe it's not. Maybe you did it like ethically and like morally, and maybe you kind of push the boundaries, right? I am going to use a short word for that. We're going to call it being shrewd. And it means sometimes you make things work even though it's a little bit questionable. So we're in the book of Luke today, and Jesus is talking with a group of folks. Jesus tells the story of a manager who gets busted for overdoing his personal expenses account, basically, and quickly decides to pull in the troops by writing off a bunch of people's debt so that at least when he loses his job, all these people will have goodwill towards him. It's not entirely ethical. In the long run, he's not really hurting the master. The master's going to get more money back than he would have from these people who aren't paying their debts. On the other hand, it's a little shady, right? But in this story, Jesus tells, the master says, that was really clever. I wish you would have used those skills to get this done before now. That shrewdness helped me. And he says, you know, I really want you to think about this differently. The Pharisees and others have been putting pressure on him. And he says, listen, you have all these skills for not getting in trouble. You have all these skills for rationalizing and making things sound like you had the best of intentions when maybe you didn't. You have all these abilities to dodge, duck, and weave and get around all kinds of stuff. Why not use those abilities for good? Why do you assume that you have to just do everything straight-laced to be a good person? Why not be shrewd? Use that skill that you've already got to make things happen, to get things done, and use it for good. What might you get done if you did it that way? And in the long run, the rules of this world aren't going to last forever. Now, that doesn't mean we should be evil or unethical or we should lie or all these kind of things. But on the other hand, if we already know how to be shrewd, if we already know how to get what we want sometimes, why not use that skill to the glory of God? And that's what Jesus is talking about. I remember one time I was in a big congregation up north in Bemidji, and we had a big fight about moving a pew. And it was just a couple of pews. It was one small pew in the choir loft. And everybody thought it was a good idea except for one member of the congregation. And they were really upset. And so they talked to everyone, and they worked out all this anger. And we finally had a worship and music committee meeting, which, again, worship and music, right? It was like the people who plan church. And there were 60 people there at this meeting all saying, yeah, we should move this pew. And one person said no, and they cried. So we didn't do it. But my pastor during that time, brilliant guy, he said, hey, Chris, this is going to get a lot of heat, but not a lot of light. It's going to cause a lot of trouble, and everyone's going to freak out about it because this person's freaking out. What could you get done somewhere else in the church while this is the distraction and going on over here? He said, put together a proposal that is similar but somewhere else, and I'll bet you'll get it done immediately. And I said, seriously? He said, yes, absolutely. Now's the time to get something else done. So I looked around the church, and we needed to get lights and some window coverings and some other stuff done up in another worship space in the church upstairs. And it was a $7,000 or $8,000 project. So I put together the proposal. The council and the people looked at it. They're like, oh yeah, that's no big deal. Nobody's going to care about that. Go ahead and get it done. And the unspoken word was, because we're all upset about this thing, let's get something else done, positive. I couldn't believe it. I've learned since then. Sometimes when there's resistance to something, it's an opportunity to go somewhere else. Sometimes we got to use that shrewd strategical thinking and come up with plans that get things done, knowing that people might not always respond rationally or well. And when they don't respond rationally, how might we still accomplish work for the good of God's kingdom? I'm Pastor Chris, here in Cyrus, thinking today about Luke chapter 16. I hope it's a good week for you. We'll see you at worship on Sunday. Until then, signing off for now.